If y'all remember, about a couple years ago, I did a video talking about this individual that you see right here on your screen. And his name is Tevin Biles Thomas. The last name, or the name before the hyphen before Thomas kicks in, should ring a bell to you because it's relatable to a very famous gymnast by the name of course, Simone Biles. This is her brother, Tevin Biles Thomas. And I'm gonna actually go into a little bit more detail why I hated how this story really took, I guess you can say, took its course. But the last time I talked about him, he had multiple charges of murder onto his name, and he was in prison until his trial came up. His trial was going on. It was kind of a low key trial, like no one really knew about it except the family of the deceased and most likely his family members, and probably Simone herself. And it had to probably be hard on her just a little bit because she had to not only focus on the trials to compete in the Olympics, but she also had this looming in the back of her head that her brother could possibly go to jail for the rest of his life for murder. Now, basically what happened is there was a shooting that occurred back in 2018 in which 3 people were killed, and I think one of the people that was killed was a family member. And they said Tevin Biles Thomas was the one that was the gunman that pulled the trigger and was the one who committed the shooting. They apparently had evidence to prove that he was the one that did it. Now, last month, the case took a turn for the worse, not for him, because apparently the jury or the jurors got a hold of some classified documents that they were not supposed to get. How they got it, I don't know. It's like a mystery about how they got it. I think someone gave it to them that they wasn't supposed to get. And what ended up happening was the judge declared a mistrial. And when I found out that the judge declared a mistrial in this case, I said, oh, he's probably going to walk. One thing you do not want to have happen is when there is a big murder trial, when someone's on trial for murder, you need to make sure that all your T's are crossed and all your I's are dotted. There is no room for error. And when that mistrial got declared, and I'm going to read the article and hopefully it tells what kind of mistrial it was, because it was pretty big. It wasn't no minor thing. It was pretty major. But when I heard about that mistrial, I said, yeah, he's probably going to walk. And now it's going to be up in the air saying that he did it or didn't do at this point, because now with the charges being dropped, they can no longer say he's a murderer, even if he did do it, because of that mistrial. But I'm going to go ahead and read the article and give my take about, what has been said. Also, the reaction from the mother of the deceased, as well as my take on what I did not like about this whole situation. After a mistrial was declared last month in the murder trial of Tevin Biles Thomas, the brother of Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles, a judge in Ohio acquitted Biles Thomas of the charges against him in a retrial on Tuesday, court records show. So there it is. Like the mistrial basically threw out everything that was leaked that they were on trial for from the beginning. So that means that whole trial went to hell. And then they started a new trial, and then he was found, well, not so much not guilty because there was no verdict. They just dropped the charges altogether. Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court Judge Joan Sinneberg granted a Rule 29 motion for judgment of acquittal by the defense for lack of evidence, dismissing Biles Thomas' murder charges and acquitting him of voluntary manslaughter and felonious assault charges, court spokesperson Darren Tom said. Biles Thomas was arrested in 2019 on charges of murder, voluntary manslaughter, felonious assault, and perjury in connection with a New Year's Eve fatal shooting in Cleveland. On the night of the shooting, a group of uninvited guests walked into a home and a fight began, Ohio authorities previously said. That fight led to the shooting and multiple people were hit, 2 of whom died at the scene and a third who later died at the hospital. Cleveland police had Biles Thomas as the shooter. He has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. Following the judge's ruling, a person in the gallery charged towards Biles Thomas but was stopped by sheriff's deputy, Toms said, adding that the court thanks the sheriff's department for their assistance. And that person who charged him was, like I said, the mother of one of, or maybe a couple of the deceased. This was a horrible tragedy. 3 families lost 3 family members, and absolutely horrific. So we understand emotions were running high, Biles Thomas attorney Joe Patucci said. But today, Tevin Biles was vindicated, what he's waited to get for the last 2.5 years. Patucci added that Biles Thomas has maintained his innocence for the last 2.5 years because he is frankly innocent of these charges, and today we were able to see that the state had absolutely no evidence that he was guilty of the offense. So basically they're saying that there was no evidence to prove that he actually was the one that pulled the trigger killing them, because they said this was at a party. So they're basically saying it could have been anybody that could have did it. Then that mistrial right there is what, in my opinion, really screwed it up. And I'm going to see if I can look this up to try to find out what that mistrial was. And this article that I'm reading is from May 25th, 2021. So this wasn't even a whole month ago. They said a judge in Ohio declared a mistrial on the murder trial of the brother of Olympic gymnastics champion Simone Biles after jurors said they had read legal paperwork that inadvertently was included in evidence given them to review. So they were given something they were not supposed to be given. And that's how the mistrial got declared. It says all 12 jurors told the judge during the third day of deliberations on Monday that copies of legal briefs from Tevin Biles Thomas's lawyers and prosecutors arguing over whether Biles Thomas might have acted in self-defense had influenced them. It was not clear how the paperwork ended up with the evidence. The U.S. Army soldier is, I'm not even going to read that part because now that's reading more so in past tense, and that would defeat the purpose. They said authorities said gunfire broke out when a group of men arrived uninvited to the party. 19-year-old Delvonte Johnson, 21-year-old Tashawn Banks, and 23-year-old Devon Gibson were killed. It says Biles did not. Okay, now they're going into that, and this is a part where I'm about to get into, which I what I didn't like about this case. So there it is. That's what caused the mistrial. It said they read legal paperwork that was included in evidence given them to review that could have influenced their decision to go and swing another way as far as a decision went with a verdict. So yeah, and that's how it really broke down. But let me tell y'all what I did not like about this case, and I expressed as such back when this first happened. I did not like the fact that they dragged his sister into this. I didn't like that. I really didn't. And the reason why is because I knew that the press would start asking her questions about how she feels about her brother and the situation that he's going through right now. And they probably told her, the press is going to ask you questions. Just, ignore it. Like, don't even answer the question. If you have to do an interview, make sure, because they give you a paper or something like that, going down a list of things that you don't want to discuss. Just mark all of this off, because we're not here to talk about what's going on in the legalities of your brother and what he's going through. We're here to talk about you and competing in the next Olympics. That's one major thing that and probably one of the few things I hated about this case, because I knew they were going to drag her somehow into it. She had gave a statement on Twitter, and she was just basically saying she's sending out her condolences to the families and everything like that. And I think some people got mad at her because she didn't condemn her brother for what he allegedly did. Of course she wasn't going to do that, because there was no outcome at the time. It was still early on. And she knew not to step that far into the rabbit hole, because they knew that people was going to come and press her even more. So I think she has a good PR team on her side to let her know what to and what not to say. But I just hated that they dragged her into it like she has something to do with it. No, she has nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, her and her brother didn't even grow up together. Because, I think she has a sister. Her and her sister, I think, were adopted. And her brother, wasn't. So they grew up apart. But the crazy thing is, they're not that far apart in age. They're only like a 2 or 3 year age gap between the both of them, but he is the oldest. There are pictures of them together, later on in life, when they're both older, of course, way after she's garnered her fame. But yeah, and now, because this has come out, you can best believe they're gonna be pressing her some more. How do you feel about the charges being dropped against your brother? Like, it is, you know, it is what it is. But, you know, she knows that they're not there they shouldn't be there to talk about that. Should be there to be talking about, you know, how she's about to win all these gold medals. But I'm just saying that's just how the press is. Now, like I said, I'm leaving it up in the air. At this point, they can no longer say he's a murderer or anything like that. He pleaded not guilty. The charges got dropped. There was a mistrial. So they can't say that he murdered anybody. At this point, it's all just alleged. And yes, I know it's emotions ran high because they said that the mother had charged at him in the courtroom. Like she was about to like literally run over and try to knock his head off. But the security and some of her family members had to catch her before she got to him. So I can't say at this point if he did or if he did not do what he was accused of. After all, he also pleaded not guilty to these charges as well. Now, I wonder what the outcome would have been if there wasn't a mistrial. That's my curiosity. What would the outcome have been if it was not for that mistrial that happened back on May 25th? Would he have been found guilty or would he have been found not guilty? Because they say he stayed with his innocence for the last 2.5 years. Like he never came out and pled guilty. He never took a guilty plea, and they probably offered him one and he never took it. And usually when that happens, that means someone is very sure of themselves that they did not commit the act in which they were accused. Unlike Lori Loughlin and her husband, we know what they did, but they still chose to plead not guilty. And I told y'all, they're holding up the process of progress for them. I said all they got to do is stop saying not guilty and just say guilty, and then they can move forward. And that's exactly what happened, and that's why they got that light ass sentence. And now you don't even hear about that case anymore. And I'm talking about the case for every last person involved. You don't hear about that no more. And I stayed on that case. I remember doing a whole video pretty much displaying every last person that was involved with it. 50 people, probably more, but 50 that they knew of. But I also said that once they got her and her husband, they was going to talk about it no more because she was the last piece of that puzzle that they had to like kind of clear away. And once that happened, they was going to chalk it up and toss it away. Next case. But yeah, this guy right here, he must have a little angel sitting on his shoulder because he's extremely lucky to have all of the charges. And every last charge was dropped. Not one is still on the table. Every last charge was dropped. And they probably going to find a way to seal the deal right there where he cannot be charged again for the same crime. So he's a free man. Now, like I said, whether he did it or not, it's up in the air. Like they can't get him again. Well, if they lock and seal it, they probably, which would be the smart thing to do, then they can't go at him again for the same thing. But they're going to try to keep some eyes on him for sure. For sure. Maybe it might not be the best idea for him to travel with Simone to the Olympics. Like maybe just keep his distance, you know, stay out of sight, out of mind, just like not be seen. Because now people know who he is. Well, those who care anyway.